Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, and publisher at Autonomy Global. And guess what, everybody? It is December, and perhaps even more exciting than that. This is episode 100 on the Dawn of Autonomy. So 100, and we are so super blessed to have with us Don Berchoff from TruWeather Solutions. He's been a great friend to the show, been on many times, but every single year it's something new and exciting over there at TruWeather because of his leadership. And we are so thankful for you, Don, for what you do for the industry. And of course, for sponsoring this amazing month that we've dedicated to the best of 2025. So, Don, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dawn. Happy 100th. Let's make it a banger.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, anytime you're on the show, you know it's going to be. So, and we have many let's call them super fans, regulars out there. There might be some new people looking in that don't know about you. I think there'd probably be only a handful of those, but let's still go there and give them the 20-second to the 30-second elevator bio of your background.
Yeah, so I'm a meteorologist. I joined the Air Force in 1984. I was an aircrew meteorologist. I built big regional weather centers. I ran an Air Force base, and I really focused on combining this very intricate weaving of operations, weather, logistics to try to maximize air power. I take that. I went over to the Weather Service. I was the Science and Technology Director. For 4 years, I learned about all this great technology that is on the shelf that we're not actually using in aviation weather. The last time we upgraded our weather systems for low altitude weather was 1992 with the NEXRAD Doppler weather radar. I saw the technology. I said, boy, we got to get some of this out. Couldn't figure out how to do that in the Weather Service, no resources, started the company. And we've been focused on this problem of low altitude weather and the low altitude economy. I knew the day was going to come when it was going to become very important to try to figure out how to solve the problem. And that's what all we've been focusing on is how do we collect better data? How do we get better characterization of low altitude for these electric vehicles and drones that are flying without pilots?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, Don, I'm getting distracted here because our super fan, Fire Mech Tech Rob, is out there. I know you've met Rob before, Don, probably at our commercial UAV mega blast party. But Fire Mech Tech Rob is out there saying good morning, Don and Don. Congratulations on hitting 100 episodes. And just to clarify, this is 100 episodes on the rebrand Dawn of All Time. We had the Dawn of Drones before that, the Drone of Dawn. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of videos out there, and they're all on the Autonomy Global Network as well, which we launched officially in July. And of course, with our partner AUVSI on their YouTube channel. So thanks, Rob. Appreciate you. But, look, for those that don't know Don, if you dig on Autonomy Global Network, there's a thing called the Full Tilt. It's a leadership podcast we used to do. Don was on that. It was frankly one of my favorite shows. And it was the first time, Don, that I learned that you started journaling weather at the age of 7. And I always talk to people about this, kind of nature versus nurture, where's your destiny? What do you become? And I feel who journals weather at the age of 7 besides you? And so it's crazy to me. And it just, honestly, it makes a lot of sense how you've dedicated your entire life to this mission of weather, that nexus with the Air Force, the National Weather Service, and now, of course, with the drone and advanced air mobility industries. And solving these low altitude problems was really why you created TruWeather Solutions. And so explain then, just very briefly, Don, for those that don't understand the low altitude problem. I mean, you mentioned, the U.S. government hasn't upgraded the various sensors in years, but they're also limited and in number and in location, I think, which was your biggest thing in why you've now tried, you're working to put out basically not just a national network, but a global network of low altitude sensors. So talk briefly about, no kidding, the problem and what you're doing to solve it.
So today, the FAA came out with their notice for public rulemaking preamble for Part 108 and 146, and they said that only 3% of the country has weather coverage in the low altitude.
There you go.
And this is all because of the sensing's all at airports. Most of our weather sensing equipment, whether we're collecting cloud height, ceiling visibility, is at the airports. Between METARs, we do not collect that data today. People have to understand, we use satellites to do the best we can, but satellites attenuate as you get into lower atmosphere. The signal attenuates. So basically, we don't collect wind data above the ground anywhere except around airports and 2 balloon launches a day at like 200 sites. So we are basically data starved in what we call the boundary layer. Everyone knows this. This is not a secret. What we're trying to do is we use the data we do have and we model it the best we can. And we do a really good job. I mean, our forecasts have gotten tremendously accurate. But the problem is when you get down to the micro scale, that's when the uncertainty starts hitting. And again, it may not bother you if you're just driving or whatever, but if you're trying to do something business-wise and you're off 2 hours on this or 3 hours on that, or it doesn't happen like you planned, it's gonna cost you money. Weather uncertainty costs money. The U.S. economy in 2017, $634 billion was the cost of weather on the economy for not having better weather data. And so this is all trickling down. And when I saw this coming, we're not going to solve world hunger here. We're not going to get low altitude weather networks all over the world. We're going to have them where it matters, right? Around urban areas where these corridors are going up. And I strongly believe that, today about 30% of aviation, when you cancel or delay due to weather, you could have flown. It's more than I believe that. That's a fact. 30% you could have flown. That uncertainty that we see in the low atmosphere is a lot of that problem. If we could get better measurements, we will have better data about the certainty, and we will start buying down that loss of flight. And my goal is to get them in 100%, as close as possible to 100% of those flight windows that they could fly in. If we do, the ROI is there for the services to be supported with infrastructure and ROI. And that's what we're working on in Texas. And that's what we're going to be working on in these IPPs, hopefully, to demonstrate that, yes, you can do a lot better with your business model if you have better weather intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, look, everybody, if you don't know a lot about TruWeather, number one, of course, go to their website. But number two, dig through Autonomy Global. Lots of articles about weather. Just put weather in the search button. Autonomy Global Network. Like I said, Don's been on the show multiple times. So we've built up and of course, like I said, their website, but we built up quite a library, really explaining what you've done over the years. What I want to focus on this show, Don, because we have this, kind of historical record for those that want to go back and dig. I want to talk about this year because this was really a banner year for TruWeather Solutions, and in terms of your company's trajectory and impacts on the industry. So let's talk about some of the major achievements since we're talking best of 2025. Looking back on this year.
Yeah, so we now have 10 locations in the United States where we've deployed low altitude weather networks. Some of them are very robust, some of them are less robust. But the point is, these are all been funded either by NASA grants, DOT SMART grant, or commercial companies that want to invest in infrastructure. And so we are getting some of this low altitude weather collected now. And what we see is people are wowed by it. They go, you can actually see what the winds look like, at 80 meters. And when we show them that the model that they're using, sometimes 20% of the time, it's off by 5 or 10 knots. In real time at 80 meters, they go, oh, now I understand what you've been saying, right? So immediately we can alert on those sensors. We could tell you when those winds exceed a certain threshold. And we've gotten those out across the country, and people are starting to recognize that was our one big achievement.
Yeah, well, it's a huge achievement, and again, distracting. Sorry, I'm squirreling right, left, and side. We got great folks out there chiming in, Don, and one of them is Michelle Duquette. She happens.
Hi,
to
Michelle.
Hey, Michelle, our Autonomy Global Ambassador for Operations, and she says everyone needs weather, whether or not you weather. Hashtag Words Matter. She's been writing a Words Matter column for Autonomy Global, so check that out. But no, absolutely. And words matter, acronyms matter. Don, you created an acronym called WISE,
Right.
WISE, for this network. Tell us what that means, and again, what this expansion actually means on the ground.
Yeah. So first, I just want to say, using words for Michelle, weather only matters when it matters, right? Because people, they get so used to like weather generally being okay, and they don't really build resiliency into their operations because they think it's hard, which it is. It's not easy. A lot of this has to do with workflow. There's still good data out there today that's not being fully optimized in these decisions. So, what we're trying to do is also make that data more simpler for people to use, and we'll work with companies to show how they can maximize their workflows. You got to remember, this is not the same as traditional aviation. We have to really focus on a different problem set that these aircraft are going to have. So WISE is our weather intelligence sensor ecosystem. And it's really the benchmark of how you're going to get better weather data. We talk about machine learning models and Google DeepMind, and that's great. I mean, I'm telling you, if we can run a global model that used to take 5 hours in 5 minutes, that's an achievement, especially if it's as similar or better capability. That's not going to solve the microweather problem because you have to have data. You have to have data to do machine learning. And generally in weather, what happens is we take the best estimate of what we think is happening, and we use that as our training data set, machine learning. So there's already uncertainty in the uncertainty. And the other problem is we don't even validate it because we have no data, right? So WISE is going to help. That's the benchmark to help solve the beginning of that problem, to get real data and feed it into our models. And this is what we're doing in DFW, right? And I think we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, before we do, I want to again kind of talk about someone out in the audience. Jim Velasco's out there, and it sounds like Don, you have a super fan. Looking forward to using TruFlight to track winter storms now in my new Kentucky area. I'm simulating how ice and blizzard conditions will affect drone strikes. So really,
well, Jim, you're going to see more snow this year because you're sitting right in the perfect spot for this year's weather patterns.
Well, now, like Don, you're preaching to the choir when you talk about micro weather. Honestly, I got my drone pilot license. I'm pretty sure it expired. I'm not going to renew it. You don't want me flying a drone. I'm just not a good pilot. But I took the test just to kind of see what it was like, to really understand the industry. And it was cool. I'm glad I did it. But here I am sitting in Colorado Springs, Colorado right now. And it's snowing outside my window. I can see it. And there's about 4 inches out my window. I can tell you about 5 minutes up the road on Monument Hill, which is about like at least a 1, maybe 2,000 foot elevation gain just because of where it's situated, even though it's such a quick drive. They're going to have at least 3 or 5 more inches than me. And so, to think like, oh, here I am, like just say I use the Air Force Academy, say they had a weather, because they have a little airport there, they have a little tower. Say they had a weather capability there that I could tap into. That weather is going to be different than what's happening in Monument. And so I get it. I mean, just driving a car, like if you don't know that this is a problem, and of course with, add, like you said, winds and other things, when you're talking about aerial vehicles, it's a whole nother thing. By the way, Greg Larson is out there. Hello as well. Okay, so let's talk
my
about
friend from Savannah, Georgia. Sounds great.
They're like rolling in today, my friend. We got Dean Rudolph, critical topic, more and more important as the aircraft gets smaller.
Dean out in Omaha.
Yeah, and autonomy more deployed. So let's talk about DFW. We're talking about deployments. We're talking about autonomy. Great proof of concept happening out there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're very much involved in that. Everybody's talking about operational evaluations and what's going on down there. I know you did some things through NASA and a DOT Smart Grant initiative. Tell us about those things.
Well, first, I want to address something you said earlier. The FAA in their NPRMS, in the preamble, acknowledged that weather between METAR sites is uncertain, basically, that you can't depend on the data from a METAR site once you get away from the airport. They use 5 nautical miles as a rule of thumb. We generally do that. But the issue is that changes based on the weather. The worse the weather is, the smaller the relevancy of that area. That's the challenge, because the weather changes, right, locally. So they've acknowledged that, and they've said that we are going to have to look at using third-party weather services as part of the system potentially to solve this. And they've written part 146 as draft, and they have something called an automated data service provider. And weather used to be a supplemental data service provider, but due to banging on the drum from people on this call, they now recognize we need to bring it up to the same level as detect and avoid and surveillance, and they have. And so we're working right now on an NTAP waiver with the FAA. I give them a lot of credit. Meetings out of this morning indicate that around Dallas-Fort Worth, we're going to hopefully have that, and it's going to be maybe even adaptable to more operators than just one at a time based on what we discussed this morning. I give them a lot of credit. We have the best weather network really in the world right now around Fort Worth to do this testing and evaluation, not just of trying to demonstrate the value of this data to end users if they're willing to try it, but also the value of the standard that we've written for ASTM, the value of what FAA is trying to do with Part 146, and the value of how this is all coming together so that third-party weather providers can be trusted and used for UTM and for sharing data across the ecosystem, and they could do it safely. So that's the big point about the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I think what you're seeing is
a cool video, Don. So what I want to do, let's roll the video and you talk over this and tell us what we're seeing. Let's go ahead and roll that.
So this was the beginning of us putting our first scanning wind LiDAR in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The video you see is the helicopter dropping that on top of Alliance Airport's terminal. Thank you, Chris Ash. Thank you, North Texas. Thank you, Ernest Huffman. Thank you, everybody who's believed that we got a problem here. We've got to start getting our head around. And what this is these scanning wind LiDARs. There's 3 of them, and there's also vertical LiDAR. So a scanning wind LiDAR could see 5 to 10 kilometers on a radius, and we do searches for wind using Doppler technology and looking for dirt and dust in the air. And we can then take that data and we can bring it into a grid, and we can have much more accurate low altitude weather at different layers up to about 3,000 feet. We also have vertical wind LiDARs we're putting out, which are just pointing straight up. And then we also have ceilometers to collect ceiling height between airports and visibility sensors and cameras. So we're going to have a much better picture of what the low altitude looks like from a microweather perspective. And then we're going to start running our modeling. And I think we're going to show that in a second, some of the wind modeling that we are demonstrating today and running every hour around Fort Worth.
Here we go. Here's that video. We're rolling right into it. Tell us what we're looking at.
So what this is a 2 by 2 kilometer area. We call this swaps. And what it does is it takes the current model that we think is the best available data. We downscale that and run it through the buildings. And what this shows you is how buildings change the wind speed and direction. And so we're going to be working to get this packaged into a product that we could give to our operators through some of our partners out there today we're working with to get this to them so they could do a better, manage their routes better, stay away from where the winds are swirling around buildings too much, because winds actually blow downwind off these buildings. So, you may want to change your route to go upwind of a building on a certain day. This shows you what those winds are looking like and how they're swirling. This is going to be very critical at vertiports in urban areas, right? Because, right now it's kind of a guess about what those winds are looking like. You got a windsock, really, and a windsock is good to 15 knots, and you have to be looking at it. So it's not very good for digitizing information to get it into automated systems. So what we want to do is get this out. We also going to be assimilating that LiDAR data in. So we're going to get better conditions of what's really happening. And then we'll be able to do machine learning and validation of this. And we'll be able to improve these forecasts over a period of time, over a year or two. And that's what real machine learning about weather's about, having real data and validating it with real data in order to improve the forecast. And so I'm looking forward to getting this out in other areas around the country, in certain areas, and as well as overseas.
I love it. I love that one of the key colors is pink. I just gotta give a shout out to that. And reminding me of pink, we've got Drone Desi Diva out there. Drone Diva Desi, I'm sorry, Desi Eckstein is out there as well. Love Desi and everything she's doing for the industry, and being a fan today, like saying, yes, Don, everything you're saying is so true. So
By the way,
awesome.
I just want to say that was live. So we're running that every hour today in that area as a demonstration.
Wow. Yeah.
It goes out to 6 hours. It takes into account the changing big weather changes, and then it downscales that into little changes that reverberate. And so we still got a lot of work to do. It's not productized yet, but that's what we're working on for 2026.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think is so critical. I don't want to really gloss over it. This idea of public-private partnerships. I believe in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You mentioned obviously, Ernest Huffman and the Council of Governments there. Hillwood, I think, is another group you worked with. City of Fort Worth. So many different groups have to come together to make this all a reality. And Don, you've created, let's call it a template. Okay, we saw the slide earlier with 10 locations.
That's all it is. It's a
Dallas being
framework.
one. So as you think about like what you've achieved and as you look towards the future, would you consider this like a cut and paste service that you're hoping to offer? Like, for example, through the EIPP, the eVTOL integration pilot program, and at other places?
Absolutely. So we're going to run two kinds of models. The first one is the very sophisticated one you saw for urban areas, which is really coupling real atmospheric information with a computational fluid dynamics model to try to do machine learning to really understand how those patterns translate at the low altitude in certain conditions. Then we're going to have a second model, which we're calling our neighborhood scale, which will take some of those observations you saw that we're collecting and put it into a 1 kilometer grid that won't be CFD. It won't have the digital twin winds coming around buildings, but it will give you a much better handle on where the fog is, where patches of fog might be that you don't see today between METAR sites. This will reduce the uncertainty. So when they make decisions about go and no go, they're going to have real data to make decisions. They're not going to be speculating. And I see that cut and paste. Absolutely. I've been thinking about this for a long time. The big challenge we have now, frankly, is we got to figure out the business model. And what I do know is that most operators are worried about the cost of having this kind of capability, and they can't commit to it. And I understand that, right?
Let's just say someone like Desi as an example, right? She's flying, she's training people. She's got a lot of colleagues out there. So how can people today like tap into what you have available, like to the services that you have?
So we have 4 levels of services today. We have what we call our core, which is what Desi could tap into. Has a conglomeration of the best collection of government, commercial, and private data sets available in an area. We crowdsource that with cameras, traffic cameras. We have the weather radar and all that, so you can really see what's really happening besides just using the METAR, right? You can actually fill some gaps with that. And then we have our mission cast, which gives you a blend of models that it's my special sauce of 40 years in the business, knowing which models are the best to cover certain areas like ceiling or visibility. There's no one model in the world that could do all of that well. We have the statistics. I could show you different models even proprietary models do different things better, right? So we blended that. We have our route cast, which is a route risk profile for low altitude. And we have alerting for our sensors. And that's what we offer as core. And that's not very expensive. That's an API. But then the next level is essential, which is adding those sensors. When we add the sensors, that gives you real-time data that is not available any other way through our core product. We're filling the gaps. We pick the areas that we think are important to fill a gap to get maybe a climatic zone that is not being picked up, like a local fog along water or along the coast. And then we offer that, and then we go to our modeling, which is our precision, which is our neighborhood scale, and our top flight, which will be our urban scale. And we're building through that. And the public-private partnership is important because we got to figure out how states, municipalities, and private sector can work together to get this infrastructure out affordably and amortize those costs across all the operators. So that way the costs are very affordable and they can have next generation capabilities that will produce an ROI for them. My goal is 4 to 1. If I'm saving you 20% of your flights because we have better data. How much is that generating for you in revenue, and how much in cost avoidance? If I could get you back 4 times the cost of our data, to you, and you meet that objective of saving that money, let's do it. Let's figure it out, right? So that's what we're working on.
Well, that's awesome. And, Don, I was just a couple weeks ago in Tennessee at the Drone and AAM symposium they held there. And, it was amazing to me, all the different states that went. And as you said, it's not just one section of government. I mean, I think the DOTs, the government agencies at the state level that are getting this right are the ones that are working collaboratively across their own bureaucracies. I mean, I think Ernest Huffman and the North Central Texas Council of Governments is probably the best model I've ever seen, and they've been doing it forever. Other people are catching up, Tennessee being one, Alabama, Texas. And by the way, preview, I'm hoping all of these folks I'm talking about are going to be at my Law Tech Connect in Detroit with Exponential next year. So stay tuned. I know Don's going to be on a panel about AAM as well. But, that State of the States Volume 3 is what I'm looking at for that. But I'm telling you, people they're starting to get it. They're starting to understand, like, hey, the aviation section of the DOT isn't just about drones. Like, they're not the only ones that need to care about this. The road people need to care. The planning people need to care. And so they're starting to connect these dots, and people realize weather is a big part of that. So while we're talking about partnerships, I want to segue for a second. You forged a couple interesting alliances, one with a strategic partner that I know you wanted to highlight this year in terms of integration. So let's talk about your platform integration with Alaris Pro.
Yeah, so I love Tony. He used to be known as Pooch in the day. And he's an innovator. He's a doer. And what we've been working on together is not only integrating our data into his services, but we've worked together on what that should look like for his clients. Because, again, weather data is not all what it seems. And, you have TAFs, you have terminal aerodrome forecasts, you have METARs, you have AirMets, and then you've got private sector data like MissionCast and other things. What does it mean to the end user? And we worked very closely with him and Don to figure out what would be the experience he wants to give to his customers that really get the full value of what we're doing, right? It's not a matter of just punching in a data set, because it could be effective or it may not be. The key is how does it help the workflow of the end user? And that's what we worked on. So I really value that partnership with them. We learned a lot working with them. We're working with others. I can't really, I don't want to advertise because I don't know how people feel. But the bottom line is we're doing that with others also. And I want to go back to Dallas. I feel very fortunate that I made the decision 3 years ago to take the test bed we did in Hampton and bring it into Fort Worth. It was a bet, right? And I made a bet that those folks in Dallas and Ernest and the folks at the Mike Sanders and all the folks down at the test center, I made a bet that they were going to be a leader, and that we wanted to get that best weather data in the spot that was really going to highlight the value, because they were leaning in heavy. And, I think it's paid off, and it's paying off because we have this DOT Smart Grant, which is really looking at, this is bigger than TruWeather. I want you to know, like, we bring a lot of partners into this stuff. We probably have 5-6 weather companies that we're working with to fill this Uber integration approach, because we're not trying to say we're the expert.
Because I was at the Air Force, so the AFA Airspace Cyber Conference. There was this big weather company there. And I went up to them because anytime I see weather, I have to ask, do you know Don? Are you working with Don? And they're like, absolutely, we're working with Don. I took a picture with them. I sent it to you. I know you recall. But no, I mean, it's so cool the way you're working across many different aisles to make this all happen. And so I want to, Don, our time is flying. I want to make sure we get in like everything you want to cover today. And I want to talk, just kind of, I want to talk about 2026, right? So look, tons of validation for you in 2025. These 10 dots on the map. Let's throw that up again, because I think it's worth looking at one last time if that's possible. There we go. So here we've got, all of these test beds, we're this WISE network.
So let me just say, I got my friends up in Grand Sky, and that help support that Meteor drone that we got up there.
Yep.
We've got our friends in Bedrock in Detroit. We have Washington Warren Airport and X-Elevate in North Carolina. We've got our Texas friends. We're going to have our Hollister friends, the Dart folks, the Monterey Bay folks. Skyway is helping us tremendously. I want to give Skyway a shout out. You don't do this by yourself, right? And so I wanted to make that clear, and that's where we're going in 2026, right? Now, how do we start to really commercialize this, and how do we build these out most cost effectively?
Well, and that's a great segue, Don, to talk to you about, what is your focus for 2026 as you look ahead to the new year?
So my focus is really working in Texas. There's the FAA Center for Advanced Aviation Technologies. We know there's a priority by the FAA on urban weather. Thank you, FAA, because we are ready to demonstrate, and there's a lot to do there. We got to figure out not only how the standard is and this idea of using third-party weather and how trusted it could be, and we got the NTAP for that. But we also want to see, how do we get this very complex data into our systems, our user systems, in ways that they can get the full value of it. Weather data is huge. Most people don't understand. They go, oh, just give me all the grids and I'll take care of it. Well, no, because you can't afford to download all my grids, and you have to store all this, right? So I'm hoping in Texas this year, we figure some of that out. How do we make this usable data, that data you saw around those winds, how do we make that into usable information? That's number one. That's priority one. Priority two is the standards themselves. And we're working on a means of compliance. Now we're going to upgrade the ASTM weather standard this year. And we're going to tie that back to 146. And we're going to be working with the FAA to figure out what does an SPSO or an advisory circular look like in the future, so that third-party weather providers can join and know that they could be trusted and certified. That's another priority. The other one is we're working on a weather data marketplace. We have a data lake that we've built, and we want to start looking at how we can get the sensor data out to people if they want to purchase it, even if they don't want to buy all our TruWeather services. They just want to get the wind profile for research, or maybe they want to use it for other purposes, like, hey, I have a pollution downrange, and I want to know what the winds are doing, so to know which way it's blowing that day, so that we can get advisories out.
And highly relevant to someone like Fire Mech Tech Rob, who might be dealing with a wildfire in California. He said Hollister's only 40 minutes away from him, and he's right there in Monterey. So if you guys haven't connected, you need to.
Well, let me tell Fire Ed. I'll call him Fire Ed. We had Fireman Ed, for the Jets. I know I'm a loser. I'm a Jet fan. But Fire Tech Ed, we are working on a low altitude weather network with Skyway, with DART, with the California EDA. We're going to have some of the best weather data in the Hollister area for wind. And I would love to have you, join us. We're going to have we're having a seminar. We're actually going to be part of the DART Lift Summit in April, 31 March to 1 April, with our friend Josh Metz and the whole team out there. And weather's going to be a little bit of a weave throughout the whole event. And we're going to be able to talk about this network out there that could serve fire and other activities besides just low altitude. Because that's the point, right? Once you get these sensors out, we just never been able to get the beachhead and the business case. But now, once it's out there, there's going to be a lot of users for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as I, kind of listening to you, Don, to summarize, your focus areas for 2026, obviously continuing to lead through action is something you've been doing for years, but, supporting companies to meet weather standards, industry leadership and advocacy, sensor network expansion, all of these things are on the whiteboard for you guys. As you look, kind of more generally, Don, you sit back and you look more broadly at the industry. What do you predict for 2026? Like, we know where you're going, where you're driving your company, and your partners along with it, and frankly, the industry along with that.
Mhm.
But what do you see in your crystal ball as you look ahead to 2026 for the industry?
So, I'm looking at several things around the world, right? I came back from South Korea recently, and I was very impressed what they're doing in KUAM, in the challenges in around Incheon and Seoul. See that as an area to watch for air taxis. You look at Dubai and you look at Saudi Arabia, especially Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Obviously Joby and Archer out there, and I think we have to see how that goes this year. And what's the traction that can be gained in demonstrating and actually performing real operations that are paying customers. I think that's the kind of the beginning to watch this, to see, is the industry going to move at a rate that we all hope it's going to move at? Here in the United States, I think, we are really taking a leadership position with the EIPPs. Now, I just want to drive home, in 2026, our goal is we want to start tying our hose into as many systems as possible. We want to start generating our revenue, our SaaS revenue. We want to start enabling companies to have advantage of what we've developed. That's one of our goals in 2026. We want to start hoping that we could get with Part 146 and 108. We need that, right? We all need that. The industry needs that. That's going to really drive the pace, right? It's like the pacing car for the industry. And we need that too. We need our guys flying beyond visual line of sight, because that's where our value really comes in. So I think we have to watch that. But then on the EIPP side, there's going to be a lot of opportunity here that the FAA is going to be driving with these regional consortiums to really test and demonstrate ecosystem development around not just the aircraft, because the aircraft is great and we got to get them certified, and they're obviously the most important piece of the puzzle. If you don't have an aircraft, you don't have an industry. But the ecosystem that serves it around it is really important, and I think we're going to see that. And whoever they pick as those 5 locations, they're going to be really spotlighted, and they're going to have an opportunity to really help push the industry forward. And we're looking forward to working with them. And I think, again, how that all plays out, Part 108, EIPPs, what happens in Dubai, is all really critical to understanding what the pace is going to be of this industry. There's a lot of companies hanging on by a thread right now, and we need to start generating revenue. And I think that could be a year also where people start falling off the cliff, where their fingers have been holding on. So we have to help each other. We got to recognize that we're all in this together, and we got to help serve each other as interests, because we're, as Benjamin Franklin said, we're either gonna, we'll either go down together or we'll be standing together, right? So it's really important. I think this is going to be a year to see how this all ecosystem component plays out and how it's commercialized and commoditized. If there's a future in 2027, which it will be, but what will 2027 look like, right? That's right. You either join together or you die separately, right? That was it.
Yeah,
so
I think that, well, first of all, I'm from Philly, go Ben Franklin, but
I love Ben Franklin.
Absolutely. I've been saying this for years, Don. Like, the companies and the groups that are going to succeed are the ones that will work together. We've seen this even on the military side, right? This whole idea of modular open systems approach. If you're proprietary, that's the equivalent of the 4-letter word right now. Like, you can't be proprietary. Like, you have to be able to plug and play. You have to be able to work with others, play well in the sandbox, if you will. And you've been really a model for that. These public-private partnerships, I think, that you've created, I think in 2026, those are also going to drive expansion across the board in the industry, outside of TruWeather. I think weather is going to be an economic and operational driver, regardless of what industry you're in autonomy, whether you're defense, whether you're commercial, whether you're public safety, whether, you're drone or air taxi, as you said. And I think the regulatory evolution that we're looking forward to in 2026, not just in the United States, like, we all want Part 108 to be done.
That's right.
Part 146 to be done, right? Like, Europe's had use space for a while, but like then the States didn't really implement it fully. So we all know this. And so seeing, all of those things start to come to fruition on the regulatory side, and then all of those things coming together with commercialization, I think that's kind of where we're heading, and we're seeing some consolidation too along the way.
That's right.
So it's going to be an exciting year. 2026, 2025 was amazing. We still have about 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we didn't miss anything, Don, like before we close out today, to make sure that, you're able to get your message across. The best of 2025 as you look back on this year. What's like the one thing you're the most proud of?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I feel most fortunate about is that we have lots of friends out there that have been believing in us. I'm losing my voice because I've been sick for 4 weeks. So you got me excited again today, Dawn.
I know. You got to get a lozenge again, or like,
That's right. But it's really, I always tell people that what we're trying to do is bigger than TruWeather, right? We're trying to solve a problem that has existed for a long time. Helicopter pilots will tell you, they just don't know what the weather is sometimes when they're going to go out to a highway and pick up crash victims and try to get to the heliport at the hospital. They may be fogged in there and they may not know, and so they'll turn down some of these rescues because they don't know. And 30% of the time they could have taken it, right? So this is not a new problem. This is a problem we've always had. It's just that we've worked around it, we've mitigated it. And I think what I'm trying to show people and I think where the believers help us, is that there are solutions to this problem. It's not going to be free. Free weather data is free for a reason, and it's costing you 30% of your flight time. And I like to talk to the CFOs and talk about the weather tax, right? The weather tax is the price Mother Nature imposes upon your business, both real and perceived. If we had perfect weather information, your weather tax might be 15% in New York City. But because we don't, it's going to be 30%. And how do you get back, that 30% of that? And I think this is just a math problem and a physics problem that there is solutions. So we just got to we're going to keep working hard. We're going to work with the smart grant folks. We're going to we're going to demonstrate Fort Worth as a shining star. I give Fort Worth City a lot of credit for taking this on. And we're going to try to get a stage 2, and we're going to demonstrate that the data we're collecting is going to be good, not just for low altitude weather, but for ground mobility, for other vehicle, flooding, knowing where, you can't get over an overpass. It's going to be expanded. And our goal is to show that you could take all the weather data that's being collected today, like a place like Fort Worth that's in stovepipes, and let's bring it into an Uber weather integrated machine, add new sensors on top of that, and then let's really double, triple, quadruple the capabilities that are somewhat resonant already, but just not being fully realized. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And Fort Worth is our focus this year to demonstrate that, and then take that everywhere else.
Yeah. The cut and paste weather model, if you will. So weather ecosystem. So great stuff, Don. Thank you so much again for everything you've been doing for the industry. I've been really, since the day I met you, honestly, I've been a super fan. So it's been so cool to watch TruWeather continue to grow and thrive and bring everybody along with you. I mean, that ASTM standard, the F38 weather standard, for those out there that don't fully appreciate the work that Don and others did in that, it's huge. And the fact that folks like the FAA or EASA are looking to incorporate that into, whether it's an advisory circular or something else, the hints about it in Part 146, the NPRM, all of these things are, no pun intended, forecasting what the future of weather will be like for the drone and AM industry. So thank you very much. Don, how can people learn more about TruWeather, and how can they reach you as we close out this show?
Well, of course, they can go to trueweathersolutions.com. They can link up with me on LinkedIn. We have TruWeather Solutions on LinkedIn. We have a contact form and on our web page. And we're really interested in hearing what is your problems that you are seeing with weather, and don't assume that it has to be an expensive solution to fix it. Sometimes it's just a problem, procedures and workflow that can help resolve some of it without spending a whole lot of money. And I think that's the key, what we're trying to do. I think, from my perspective, the FAA and EASA and those guys, they're really being friendly about the new standard. I think we're transforming, we're breaking the weather paradigm. And we're saying, let's open up the spigot for innovation that's always been out there. Let's allow private sector to contribute to the aviation weather system. Let's not keep it closed like we have, because that's really what has prevented us from getting the low altitude improvements that we need. It's a resource issue. It really is. And it's a focus issue. So hopefully we'll continue to be successful at that.
Absolutely. I have no doubt you will, and we'll all be the better for it. So everybody, that is all she wrote for this particular episode.
Thank you, Dawn. I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a great believer and having us on the 100th episode.
Oh, well, it's so awesome that you are. It made it even more special for us. So thank you so much. And, for everybody out there, next week, we have another great group of folks. We're going to actually have an industry panel. This is a first. We usually have a NASA FAA show, unfortunately, this year. With some of the policies, they're not permitted to participate, which is kind of a bummer. But we have drone responders, Charles Warner. We've got Commercial Drone Alliance, Lisa Ellman, and Drone Service Provider Alliance, Kenji Shugahara, that are going to be on the show next week talking about I know it's going to be awesome. All the things that have happened in the industry from their various different, kind of perspectives and where they think the industry is going. So it's going to be awesome. Please join us. That is all she wrote. Best of 2025 right here, everybody. We are out here.